Hi there, today we're looking at hardware and software and sort of the different types, sort of the exam board like you to know. So some key learning objectives are understanding the definition of hardware and software. Can you explain it sort of to a GCSE standard? Able to classify software and able to identify key components that make up a computer system. So if we talk about hardware, your definition is the physical components of a computer system. So it's the physical parts of a computer system. So I have a CPU in front of me, I have RAM, I have a motherboard. Yes, these are all parts of a computer, but so are sort of your monitor, your keyboard, and maybe even a games controller. That is all hardware. It's physical components, okay? So we have the motherboard here, and this is really important that you understand. The motherboard is sort of like the blueprint for the computer. Where should all the components go? We also have things like secondary storage interacting sort of with our motherboard. So we might have a solid state drive that is directly connected to sort of our components, or maybe something like a hard disk drive. I will talk to you a little bit more about the advantages and disadvantages of both of these sort of secondary storage components later on in the video. Rubbish to use because it means they wouldn't store anything. Every single time you wanted to use it, you had to reinstall all your apps, operating system, all sorts. Okay, so hard disk drives are often cheaper. So this is what I was showing you just a moment ago. This is your slightly metallic one. They're often cheaper, and for a while they were widely used. Or we can look at something called a solid state drive. This was the one above it. So typically you see this in more portable devices. It doesn't have any moving parts, so it means if you drop it, it's less likely that your data is going to be corrupted. So we will actually have a whole video on secondary storage and the different types of how sort of these things work. But just for now, I need you to know secondary storage is non-volatile and it's used to store data or programs when the power is off. Okay, so the CPU is a really important component. It is the thing that is responsible for executing all the instructions, absolutely everything that is done on your computer, that is carried out when you're opening programs, when you are clicking on certain files. It is all running through your CPU to be carried out. So those calculations, those comparisons, sort of those arithmetic sort of calculations are all carried out. So it's measured in gigahertz. So just to put that into perspective, you might see, sometimes when you buy computers, you might see a normal speed is around 2.4 gigahertz. So what that's saying is it's 2.4 billion instructions per second. Now, just to sort of help you understand, if you aren't aware already how much a billion is, 11 days is a million seconds. So for every million seconds, around 11 days go by. A billion seconds is 32 years. 32 years. So your processor is carrying out a tremendous amount of instructions per second, or it's capable of doing so. So normally when you look at sort of the inside of a computer, you tend to see there's a fan on top of the CPU, and that is normally because it is doing so many calculations, it does get hot, and we want to cool our CPU down. Okay, and there are sort of 6 main parts to the CPU. There are more, but just for the moment, before we look at our specific CPU video, I want you just to understand that there is something called an arithmetic logic unit, buses, control unit, registers, cores, and a clock. They all go into sort of a CPU and make sure that it's all working timely, sort of efficiently, correctly, all of that. Okay, so you might have heard of RAM before, random access memory. This basically acts as sort of a bit of a waiting room for your computer. So at the moment, I am running presentation software. So whether that's PowerPoint or Google Slides, a copy of that is being stored in RAM whilst my sort of CPU executes sort of the instructions given. So RAM is kind of like a waiting room. If you were running, I don't know, Spotify or an internet browser, a copy of that is being stored in RAM, waiting for the CPU to execute that instruction. However, when you turn the power off or the power is removed for whatever reason, the data is gone. So we call this volatile storage. You can see this if you turned your computer fully off at the switch without shutting it down correctly. Typically what you would see is the programs that are currently running would no longer be running. That's because they are currently being stored in RAM. They would still your programs would still be accessible from secondary storage, however, they might not be open in the same way that you have them now. Okay, so a few other components of a computer, less important, may not come up in the exam, but just to sort of run through, you might have seen something called a graphics card, you might have one, you might have looked into sort of the specs of it. And this is kind of like a CPU, but just for the graphics. And you again will see them with a fan on top of them because they get incredibly hot. This is because they are carrying out so many instructions per second. And we also have something called the power supply unit. So this is normally fitted sort of inside the computer to make sure all of our components have power. Okay, so I have 2 exam questions I would like you to have a go at. I'm going to show you the correct answers in just a moment. Okay, so one type of volatile memory in a computing system is RAM, cache, and registers. You probably have already covered this sort of in your GCSE, but just as a reminder, remember volatile means it loses data when the power is off. Okay, one type of non-volatile memory in a computer system is hard disk drive, solid state drive, and ROM, read-only memory. More about that in another video. Okay, so now we are moving on to software. Okay, so software is instructions that are executed by the hardware. I know it sounds a little bit strange that I'm saying instructions, but that is all software is, a series of instructions. So right now I am using Loom software. I'm also using an internet browser. You can think about many apps on your phone. So for example, Duolingo, or maybe some social media apps, Gmail. That is all software. Now, it's really important you don't use brand names in your exam. So if you wanted to say something like Google Chrome, you would actually say something like Internet Browser. So we're not going for the brand name, we are using the specific software type. So more about that in just a moment. Okay, so there's 2 different types of software. There is system software, which sort of helps manage the computer. It enables the computer to function. And we also have application software. So typically, these are the things that we come onto the computer to use. So an internet browser, a video streaming software, video editing software, social media application. This is for an end user task. Whereas system software is just sort of maintenance or enabling the computer to function correctly. So you could think of things that maybe you wouldn't specifically go on the computer to use. So a key bit of sort of system software is potentially operating systems, so Windows, iOS, Linux, Android. These are all types of operating systems and they are all system software. Without them, your computer wouldn't work particularly well. Antivirus, firewalls, disk defragment sort of software, all of that comes under system software. So it's really important that you memorize those because it's an easy couple of marks. Again, just to highlight, you are not going to say Windows, you are going to say operating system. You are not going to say AVG antivirus, you are just going to put antivirus software. Okay, and then down to application software. We've said it's for end user tasks, so this is typically things we go onto the computer to use. Word processor, internet browser, spreadsheet software, social media application, music players. And it is just a case of being able to pick a few. I would maybe say memorize 3 different types of application software and 3 different types of system software that you can easily pluck from your brain when asked, and just a case of repetitive going over them. What can I remember? What can I list? Can I list this piece of application software without using the brand name? Okay, so I actually have another exam question for you, and this is just an example question. One piece of application software. I'm going to show you where you get the marks in just a moment. Okay, so final sort of question from me. One example of application software. Like I say, I would maybe remember sort of 3 or maybe 4. So if you get sort of examples given to you in the question, you have a couple more to go, sort of a plan B. So we have word processing software, database software, spreadsheet, social media, communication software, online ordering applications, online auction software, and also gaming software is one. So it's really important you are not putting brand name and you're aware of the different categories.